Hi, this is Eric at Try Audio. Today we're going to do another comparison of some low wattage vintage receivers, all 20 watts or less. We're going to compare their looks, their specs, and most importantly, their sound. Today's receivers are the Sony STR-6036A, the NAD 7020, and the Marantz 2015. Let's get started. The Sony STR-6036A is rated at just 15 watts and was made from 1973 to 1974. It was usually marketed with the very similar STR-6036A, which was nearly identical but rated at 20 watts. Both of these have been preceded by models that didn't have the suffix A, the 6036 and 6046, which ran from 71 to 73. The 6036A got one more watt than the previous 6036 and some minor cosmetic differences like push buttons for speaker selection. The 15-watt 6036A originally sold for $200, which is about $1,400 in today's money. Today you can pick up one used for about $100 to $150. So here we have the front of the Sony STR-6036A. You got two speaker outputs, bass, treble control, loudness, one phono, one aux, one tape input, very minimal. I tried putting blue lights in there, it did not really change the color at all. So I put white LEDs in there. Lights up very brightly, but it's always going to be that green color no matter what you put in there. And you got your tuning meter. I also want to mention the wood on this thing. When I got this was all nasty. It was all scratched up, gonked up, very water stains and everything. I just took some sandpaper to it, sanded the whole thing smooth, and then used just some wood wax on it and put it on there, and all the color and the shine came back. It took a few coats of that wood wax, but it absorbed in. So if you get one of these things and it's all beat up, don't be afraid to just take some sandpaper. You don't even need to restain it. And then just put some wax on there, put some moisture back in it. I do have a little scratch there. If you can get one that's got all the slats that are in good shape. So talking about not much here, we just have one AC outlet. These screw speaker terminals, I know it was common for the era back in the early 70s, but these are not great. And then you just have your antenna and inputs. You know, I just now noticed this does not have a built-in AM antenna. Almost all receivers have those little plastic things. I literally just realized that. The NAD 7020 is rated at 20 watts and was made from 1979 to 1982. NAD, which stood for New Acoustic Dimension, was a very popular brand in Europe, particularly England, but didn't have much of a presence in the US. It also had a black front at a time when most US models still had silver fronts, making it look like a later model receiver than what it really is. The NAD amplifier, the 3020, is famous for being one of the best-selling amplifiers of all time due to its fantastic performance at a budget price, selling over 1 million units worldwide. The 7020 receiver is essentially that 3020 amplifier with a tuner added to it. The NAD models were known for being able to supply power beyond their rating, due in part to technology they referred to as soft clipping. This was a way to limit the unit's output voltage to make sure the transistors didn't get overdriven and distort. The 7020 originally sold for around $300, which is about $1,400 in today's money. You can pick one up today for somewhere between $150 and $250. So here we have the front of the NAD 7020. Pretty minimalistic. We have two speaker outputs, your typical bass, treble, loudness. We got one phono, one aux, one tape input. One thing worth noting here, it doesn't have any dial meters. Definitely no power meters, and then no dial meters for tuning and signal, but it does have these LEDs. So it's tuned into a station now, that'll drop out, and then you get these LEDs over here for tuning. So they're being cheap, put some LEDs in there instead. This is for soft clipping, it's just telling you that it's activated. There's a switch on the back that if you turn it off, that light would go out, but you would always leave it on. All right, on the back we got two AC outlets. We got a voltage selector, so if you're in Europe, you can pick 220. Spring-loaded speaker terminals. We have the ability to isolate the preamp from the power amp. Nice feature in such a low-cost unit. has this lab in. I looked it up. It is also another input into the power amp for troubleshooting or for being in a laboratory. Basically, it's had to bypass some filters. Don't know really why they bothered to put that on there. The ability to turn soft clipping off. Don't know why you'd ever turn that off. You have a special setting here for European FM receptions and your inputs and your antenna connections. That's it. So this is my second video using the Marantz 2015. I don't want to repeat myself from the other video, so I'm not going to talk about its history and how it had 5 buttons sometimes and 4 buttons sometimes. Mine's the 4 button. Mine's the first one where it just says tape and not tape 2. So I wasn't sure what was going on. So let me show you the back. So on the back you have a tape input with no output, an aux, and then a tape monitor in and out. So you have 3 ins and 1 out, which is not how that normally works. So I did a little experimenting. So what I found out is if you hook something up to aux, put it on aux, it plays. You hook something up to the single tape input, put it on tape, it plays. If you hook something up to the tape input that has the output, it plays. If you push in the tape monitor, it overrides everything. So that makes sense. What's just a little odd is this tape is really, in my opinion, just another aux input. Best I can tell from the schematic, it works exactly as the aux input. It's really 2 auxes and 1 tape. Later, they would add a true second tape monitor and call this tape 2, but I don't have that version, so I don't know anything about it. The Marantz Model 2015 sold new in 1974 and 1975. It was originally priced at $250, which is about $1,700 in today's money. You can pick one up used today for between $300 and $500. So a quick overview of what's on the front of the 2015. We have 2 speaker outputs referred to as main and remote, the gyro touch tuning wheel, what is essentially those 2 aux inputs referred to as aux and tape, 1 phono input, loudness, 1 tape monitor, bass treble controls, tuning meter, small little footprint. Looks pretty nice. So on the back of the 2015 we have these speaker terminals that are these push-in spring ones. They're not the greatest. They can get bent. I know one of mine's bent. 2 AC outlets. We got our tape monitor in and out. Tape and aux, which essentially is 2 auxes. And your antenna connections. That's it. All right, here we have all 3. I think if this were a beauty contest, first place would go to the Marantz. It's a nice looking unit with the blue lights, the meter, the tuning wheel. Even though it's small, minimal, you got the 80s vibe of the NAD, even though it's from the late 70s, and almost the 60s vibe from the Sony with the green lights. Probably not my first choice. I don't think it's much of a contest. Boy, in looks, it's the Marantz all the way. So as far as the cases go, we do have real wood on the Sony. Of course, you just got metal on the NAD, and you got metal on the Marantz with the vinyl wrap on it, giving it the wood look. Could have come with a wood case, I believe, but this one obviously doesn't have it. So here are all 3 with the cases off. We have the Sony in the middle, the NAD on the left, and the Marantz on the right. On the NAD, it has this shielding around the power supply. The Sony looks pretty typical, as does the Marantz. I would say all 3 transformers look to be about roughly the same size. I haven't checked the weights. I would guess the Marantz is just probably the lightest based on its physical dimensions. So let's take a look at the lights and what's required. So I got a blue light here in the NAD. It is down there, and if memory serves me right, it's the only light in the whole thing, and it has to be soldered. So it's not too hard to get to. You take this off, but you do have to be able to solder to replace that light if you want to make it an LED. And then on this, like I said, they always kind of shine green but these are white, and you probably can't tell, but they're the fuse. I'm gonna swing around here. They're the fuse style that pop in. All you gotta do is take that board out. In this case, one screw, because one screw is missing. Slide that little board out, pop them in to the little sockets. Pretty easy. And then on the Marantz, these are also the fuse style that pop into the little sockets, but you got to take this off and you got to take some other stuff off. And if memory serves right, it was a little hairy getting in there, but once you're in there, you can just pop the new lights into the fuse style sockets. Another topic I want to talk about, this is the Sony. It has STK packs in the power amplifier in the final stage, as opposed to the other two, the NAD and the Marantz, which is to have transistors. Those transistors are probably going to be way easier to find than a replacement for one of these STK packs that are in here. These are probably going to be hard to come by. I've not had any trouble with mine, but something to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is how your speakers are protected from problems in the receiver, or even have protected the receiver itself from a short. The Sony has these glass circuit breakers in there. It's kind of hard to see. It looks like a tube. Probably is a vacuum tube, a vacuum breaker of some sort. Anyhow, those sit right on the output of the speaker terminals for the Sony. Should provide some protection to your speakers. And the NAD schematic shows it also has breakers. The Marantz is capacitor coupled, so it will not pass DC to your speakers, so you shouldn't have to worry about the Marantz damaging your speakers. So as usual, I stream the same song to two receivers and switch the speakers back and forth using a Duke audio switch, which has a remote control. I can sit there on the couch, listen with my eyes closed, flip them back and forth. I did not listen to a phono input, did not listen to AM, FM, had the loudness control on, and had the treble and bass control tweaked just a hair on how I normally keep these. The bass boosted a little in the Marantz. The other two have the treble boosted just a little. The three songs I use for this comparison are There's Something About You by Level 42, Jane Says by Jane's Addiction, and CPR by Wet Leg. The first comparison I did was between the NAD 7020 and the Marantz 2015. I'm going to give all three songs to the NAD for pretty much all the same reason. At a low to moderate volume, the Marantz is brighter, has just better highs. And what you notice is as you turn it up, those highs start to reveal that there are some mids missing in the Marantz that are there in the NAD. And then when you get it up to a volume to where basically you couldn't talk to somebody on the couch, it's loud, it's not horribly loud, but loud, the Marantz gets harsh. On that first song, There's Something About You, there's a snare that's in the beginning. When turned up, that snare can be a little harsh on the Marantz. On Jane Says, they're pretty equal on both of these songs, but again, turned up can be harsh on the Marantz. And then on CPR, same exact thing. So I don't want to badmouth the Marantz too much because I could see how somebody at a moderate level might like the brightness of the Marantz over the more audiophile approach of the NAD. But when turned up, the NAD clearly, I think, excels over the Marantz. Next, we have the NAD 7020 and the Sony STR-6036A. These two are almost identical. There's so little difference between these two. It's kind of crazy because I've listened to a lot of stereos, compared stereos in this manner for a very long time, and it's very rare to find two that are so the same that you can't even, with your eyes closed, even spot a difference. And I can't really spot hardly any difference at all. The only maybe difference would be the Sony might be a little fuller in the bottom end in some parts of some songs. Not nearly enough to say one's better than the other. Take a song like Jane Says by Jane's Addiction. There's all these guitars, tracks, and you can almost feel them in space on exactly where they are. And they're in the exact same spot on these two receivers. Everything about these are so close, I can't pick one or the other. So it's a wash between these two. So final comparison here is between the Marantz 2015 and the Sony STR-6036A. Well, if I liked the NAD more than the Marantz and the Sony sounds the same as the NAD, then Yeah, all three of them are going to the Sony for pretty much the exact same reasons. I don't want to rehash it all, but the Sony is just smoother when turned up. It doesn't get harsh. The Marantz does. The Marantz is brighter and has better highs, but again, lacking something in those mids that makes you want to just lean towards the Sony. All three songs to the Sony. As always, I asked my wife Laura to listen to these songs as well to get a second opinion, and she did not know my opinion on these when listening to them. On the first comparison between the NAD and the Marantz, on the first song, There's Something About You, she preferred the way it sounded on the Marantz. She thought the highs came across really well and preferred the Marantz for that one. For the other two songs, she gave to the NAD for pretty much the same reason. She thought the mids were better in those and that there was some mids missing in the Marantz. Between the NAD and the Sony, she thought they sounded the same. Can't help it, they sound the same. And then on the third one, between the Sony and the Marantz, she was consistent. She said she liked the Marantz for There's Something About You because of the highs, the way it projected, but then picked the Sony for the other two songs for the better mids and not getting harsh when it was turned up. So the quick summary here is NAD and Sony sound identical from two different eras, from two different manufacturers. Hard to explain why they would sound the same, but they do. You gotta listen to them with my eyes closed, flip back and forth. Man, you just, no difference. Now here also to summarize the Marantz, great highs, really projects them almost to a fault when turned up though. Become pretty harsh and lacking something in the mids. I want to point out that the Marantz was used in a comparison video of mine with some other receivers, and there the Marantz seemed to really lack in bass compared to those other ones. That wasn't the case here. So interesting that whatever receivers were in that video, which I know what they were, they must have spectacular bass performance because all three of these, the bass was about the same, honestly. So that difference didn't show up here like it did in that other video. So before we go, I want to touch on value, on which is the best value. That would be the NAD and the Sony. The Marantz clearly is more expensive and it doesn't perform as well as the other two. So that one is off the table for value. As far as which one is the better value for the NAD and the Sony, I would say it comes down to the price. Probably the Sony, you're going to get a little cheaper because it doesn't get the respect and it's older. It does have the STK packs. That's a downside. I've had no issues with mine. I've put no money into that thing over all these years. The NAD, I've had to resolder some joints inside that thing. And while not the end of the world, maybe not the greatest build quality that the last, 50 years, but I would go with either one of them. If I had to give a nod, I would probably say the Sony, you could probably get a little cheaper, and I would probably say it is slightly the best value, but only by a hair. Hey, I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.